morning, fellow Sweden enthusiasts. My team will be talking about the regulation and regional and state regulations and initiatives, specifically in regards to green technologies. You guys may recognize this list from the last group. They talked about it extensively. These are all the environmental laws on the federal side that were created, specifically in regards to what we thought everybody would need for their Swedish project. It also has, in many cases, a state has made specific laws and regulations also to either mirror or expand these acts. All of these can be found on the EPA's website. Now there's a little difference between laws and regulations. Laws are kind of like guidelines, and regulations are kind of like rules. So these are the laws that have been made by the federal government, and they're going to be created into rules. These rules are created by the EPA, which we talked about. It's a regulatory agency. What it does is it takes those laws and turns them into regulations that are enforceable. They do this through a rulemaking phase, which takes into account both the law and any insight that's given by the public, and then create regulations. The result? Code of Federal Regulations, or CFRs, and in this case, Title 40 specifically, protection of the environment. How are these regulations enforced? Through a combination of federal court systems and state court systems. The basic rule is if you break a federal law, your case will be heard in federal court. If you break a state law, your case will be heard in state court. However, like we talked about, many of these laws are mirrored or expanded. So the decision is whether to hear this in a state court or a federal court. All the federal courts are broken up into a number of districts. Each district will have an agreement with each state as to which cases will be heard in their state, and it'll create precedents that will then be used further on to decide exactly where those cases are heard and who enforces which regulation. Pedro will now talk about specific states and the different areas.
Now the U.S. government incentives are now making the alternative energy such as the solar and the wind power more economically feasible. However, in the past years, most of the new green technology companies are located in the traditional financial investment centers such as the California and the northeast of the America. But in the recent years, the middle of the country is playing a more and more important role in bringing more technical innovation to energy. As you can see, the California is where the most venture investment companies in new green technology. And Hawaii is the largest market for solar hot water. And the Los Angeles is the top contender in the Energy Star Building Initiative, and followed by DC, San Francisco, Denver, Chicago, and Houston. Here are some of the major state developments about the incentives through 2008 to 2009. It's including the rebates, tax credits, and the product tax incentives and financial incentives. I list all the states here. If you have time, you can have a look. It's the CO, it stands for Colorado, and the CT stands for Connector. And if you have time, you can have a look. Here is the rating for the other states about their solar power rebates, incentives, and tax credits. The 5 stars is the California and Colorado, and Ileana will talk more about the incentives in California and Colorado.
So as Pedro has already told you, I'm going to be talking to you about the incentives that the state of California has created for the past couple of decades. As we have already mentioned in the other part of the presentation, California has actually has put a lot of emphasis on the green energy efficiency, energy conservation, sustainability, green building, and green purchasing practices for the past decade. What is most interesting is that, for example, in 2003, it's, as I have mentioned, has put emphasis on these issues ever since 2003. In 2008, California has actually invested $3.3 billion in green technology ventures. What is interesting to notice is that this amount actually represented 57% of the nation's total. This is a very large amount, so this is why we chose California as one of our examples, because it is such a great hotspot for all these type of technologies. In 2008, there were 10,209 clean technology companies registered in the state of California, and I will actually tell you exactly what were those incentives that actually helped create such a large number of companies in this particular state. So I will go over the legislation a little bit, as I've mentioned. In 1991, Pete Wilson, the governor at the time, created the California Environmental Protection Agency, which kind of mirrors to a certain extent the EPA, which we have all discussed in our previous presentations. The California EPA focuses on greenhouse gas emission reductions and climate change activities in the state of California. Also in the same year, part of the Cal EPA, they also created the Department of Toxic Substance Control, which actually provides safety and protects public and environmental from toxic harm. Two of the major departments or programs that the Department of Toxic Substance Control is focusing on, and which might be of interest to some of our projects, are actually Safer Oceans and Green Chemistry. And there's more detail, of course, on their website about these two particular programs that we can all take a look at afterwards. In 2004, Governor Schwarzenegger actually passed Executive Order S-2004, which is also entitled Green Building Initiative, which puts a lot of emphasis on California's commitment to create more energy performant buildings. It also proposes a 20% cut of state-owned building energy consumption and encourages the same type of cuts and reductions in the private and commercial sectors. What is not actually mentioned here is that the same initiative actually proposes a LEED Silver certification for all buildings that were built starting 2004. In 2006, Governor Schwarzenegger also proposed $95 million of the state budget to go to companies that are involved in key innovation sectors such as clean tech, biotech, and nanotech. 2006, again, Global Warming Solution Act, which requires the reduction of greenhouse emissions by 25% by 2020. This is very important because, as one of the groups actually mentioned, this is actually in compliance with the Kyoto Protocol. And as it has already been mentioned, the United States has not signed the Kyoto Protocol, has signed the Kyoto Protocol but has not ratified it, while California has actually taken one step forward and applied legislation that is in compliance with this particular protocol. The last two solar plants, this was actually passed in February of this year. The United States Department of Energy has offered a 1.37 billion loan guarantees to BrightSource Energy. BrightSource Energy is a company that was supposed to build 3 large solar plants in the Mojave Desert in California. And this will be done with the money provided from the U.S. Department of Energy. These 3 solar plants are supposed to produce approximately 400 megawatts of energy. Also, this actually just happened last week. They signed Senate Bill 71, which offers tax exemptions for those companies that purchase and produce clean energy and technology products, vehicles, and also fuels in the state of California. Again, this represents the importance that the state of California is putting on the expansion of the green technology sector. And these are just a few of the laws, legislation, regulations, initiatives that we have found only in the state of California, which seems to be a leader in this particular sector. Another example that we took a look at, because it seemed to have exactly the same emphasis in this sector, is the state of Colorado, and Dimitri will talk to you more about that.
Thank you, Liana.